spent my whole damn life in the city. Anywhere I go, DC's coming with me. I spent my whole damn life in the city. I can go for broke, but the capital is in me. I spent my whole damn life in the city. Anywhere I go, DC's coming with me. I spent my whole damn life in the city. I can go for broke, but the capital is in me.
Welcome, everyone, to District Divided, a DC sports podcast, more specifically, a Washington Commanders podcast. I am Amit. That is K. This is an emergency episode because an absolutely massive trade took place, and we're just going to jump straight into it. K. Is Cade York the future kicker? No, listen, let's talk about Jahan Dotson. We'll touch on Cade York at the end, which also happened. But Jahan Dotson, former first-round pick, 2022, 16th overall, part of that Chris Olave trade that everyone talks about. Was traded to the Philadelphia Eagles, and here is the compensation on both sides. So the Eagles receive Jahan Dotson, Penn State guy, so he gets to go back to Pennsylvania, and a 2025 fifth-round pick. And then the Commanders, of course, receive the 2025 third-round draft pick and two 2025 seventh-round draft picks. A little more detail on the third-round pick. So they had one from Miami, and they have their own. Whichever one is better comes to us. Those seventh-round picks, they had four. Now they have two. The third and fourth ones will come to us over there. So those are the details real quick. K. What's your reaction to the move?
Bittersweet. No one ever likes the idea of the Eagles getting stronger on behalf of one of our players. Fucking hurts always. But look, man, it's just everybody knew from behind the scenes or anything. We've had the conversation ad nauseum about wide receiver 2, right? And what exists or what doesn't exist, or who's going to have the best stats out of wide receiver 2, this, that, and the other. And even when you go to some of our comments, Coach Lombard included, I'm really wondering how you're feeling about Dotson being on the team now. But you could see certain things with the body language that didn't necessarily look. It's not that it looks horrific or horrendous. It's just when we talk about that play like a commander, that like intensity or anything, I think the vibe has been, and I think everybody's being a little more honest now that he's leaving or is gone, is that it just didn't seem like he gelled with that vibe. It just felt like whatever it is that we were doing was not necessarily the thing that he was. He's much more of a finesse guy. So like blocking all the way through a play or something that's not necessarily going to be his forte. But so with that, it's like, I mean, I wish Jahan absolutely nothing but the best. And I'm never going to wish the best happens for him in Philadelphia. It's just not going to happen. But if you're looking at a situation where we've talked about how excited we are about a lot of the receiving options that we have here on the team, right? So some of the guys that are coming up, I'm maybe not as high on Martavis Bryant. We'll see what happens in this last preseason game. But from tight end to Austin Eckler out of the backfield, Brian Robinson even being a better receiving back than I thought he would be coming in the league. You want to give certain guys an opportunity to flourish, or maybe it's a situation where they'll look at everybody and they're like, maybe we don't have it figured out. Maybe there's another move coming. So this is one of 2 or 3 emergency pods we'll be doing shortly.
So before I give my thoughts on it, let's go ahead and continue with that thought process, K. So when we look at the wide receivers right now, what is still there, right? Of course, you've got Terry McLaurin. You've got Dyami Brown, who looks like he's separating himself when it comes to the wide receiver 2 discussion that Dan Quinn brings up. In
body language and moments both head in his direction.
Then you got Olamide Zaccheaus, who has also shown some moments this preseason.
Yep.
Luke McCaffrey, third-round pick. People like Jamison Crowder, he can also be an asset in the return game as he's been in the past for this franchise. So that's already 5 players. You got Ben Sinnott, you got Zach Ertz, you got Austin Eckler, you got Brian Robinson. Is that going to be enough? So K. you had mentioned that you could see another move. Is there someone you have in mind that you would go for if you were what would you do?
I don't know. So like I think what we're about to see right here is a grand indictment on where it is they think they're at. If they think that, hey, Terry's the only guy that we have on the wide receiver room that really stands out and he's the dude, then I think that they might try to make a move, or it might be one of the situations where they just look at it and say, hey, we've liked what we've seen from these other guys. As I've said, the 53-man roster is looking tougher and tougher every day. This just made it a little bit easier. Because there's a lot of guys you can look to and be like, man, that's an asset. Or that guy could be an asset. Or if that dude pans out to be this, that, and the other. It's just a matter of like what we've been saying. It's like like I want to see more Luke McCaffrey with the ones. You know what I'm saying? So like I want to see certain guys get more opportunities with Jahan. I haven't seen a lot of Crowder, and I think that Crowder is like a known asset, right? Like we know he can play. Terry in preseason has pretty much, I mean, it's been a criticism that people have been talking about, even though that I think JP Finley or somebody was like being very sarcastic yesterday about it. It was like, oh, Terry's lining up in more than one spot now, right? Like there's more that we know they're going to do with Terry that we just haven't seen in preseason because they're not going to show everything.
Right.
So it's like, I'm not entirely sure if I know the name. There's one name in particular as far as the name that they might go. And that be the Ayuk thing. I still don't think that they do. I don't know.
I'm gonna be a bit more honest and say that it is a bit of an indictment on Jahan Dotson and how he did during the preseason, including training camp, to trade him now, right? 2-3 weeks before the season in division to get just assets for the future back. I think speaks to what the coaching staff thought about Jahan Dotson. And I think it also speaks to Dyami Brown, Olamide Zaccheaus doing pretty well so far. So I think when you look at it from that perspective, you go, oh boy, they clearly did not like him. It doesn't mean he's a bad player. And when people talk about attitude, culture, etc., it doesn't mean he's not like doing nothing. Like he's obviously putting in some work, but I think they liked other guys. And when you look at the 5th-year option that would potentially be picked up at the end of this season, Cade and I were going through this, that 5th-year option, the amount would be $23.1 million. It's between the average from the 3rd to 25th highest paid receivers that would put him in between our very own Terry McLaurin and Calvin Ridley, who just signed with the Titans. So that's high
if it happened
amount
today. That like if we're talking about a year from now.
Correct. So more if CeeDee Lamb gets paid,
right,
that pushes the second highest to 3rd, and that becomes part of the equation. So all of a sudden, if you can get something back, I can see why Adam Peters made this move. Now, go ahead, Kid.
No, I think that that's what it comes down to is you're looking at something where the less time you have in that rookie contract to truly decipher what it is you have with them, you're going to get diminishing returns as far as that asset goes, right? Mm-hmm. So like, I don't think it has anything to do with like they don't care about him, so he sent him to Philly. It's just they look around the league, they're seeing what compensation is what for a guy who, like, look, if he hasn't done a good enough job separating himself as a first-round draft pick from the rest of the guys in the room, then is he really even going to have an opportunity to do so if he has?
Let me put it to you this way, K-Dot. If I've got a guy who was a first-round pick who could be due for this 5th-year option at the end of the season, and he's comparable to some of the other names that we talked about, and I can get a 3rd-round pick for him, right? There's value there.
No, 100%. I like the move. Like, that's the thing is, like, in all honesty, I like the move. Jahan is not. Look, me and you have been more.
I like Jahan too.
We like Jahan.
I like the move as well.
We like, I'll even show, like, as far as his stat sheet, like, there's nothing that really jumps off the board, but like, I see those 2 years, and I'm like, there's something there. There's something there. Like, you can compare him to a lot of even some of the late bloomers that have happened in the league. Like, I've been having a conversation about Devontae Adams, who never really blossomed until like year 4, year 5. Like, he's a dude that I think clearly has some talent. It's just so far, new regime. They're not beholden to anyone or anything. And if you haven't done a good enough job, it's not that, you're disappointing to us because you're a first-round pick. It's, hey, there's a situation where when we have to make a decision on your 5th-year option, you could be getting paid more per year than Terry McLaurin. That's it. No, like you're not worth that yet. Like we haven't seen that. So if you look across the league, trying to figure out what you're doing to put yourself in the best situation as far as just value of assets, it makes sense.
And then, right, you view what can we do for now, which again, trading a Jahan Dotson, I'm not going to say it helps right now, but getting a 3rd-round pick in return, that can be quite a valuable pick. Another top 100 pick. We talked about top 100 picks all entering the last NFL draft. This is another one coming in right now. So when we talk about a potential future move for somebody else, K-Dot, I think for me, it's going to come down to, does our coaching staff feel that these wide receivers can get separation outside of Terry McLaurin? If they can, I think we stand pat. and we see what we can do. When you look at Houston Texans, their wide receiver room last season, right? We talk about CJ Stroud. We talk about Jayden Daniels doing really well right now.
Mm-hmm.
When you hear about who Jayden Daniels is throwing to when he's doing really well right now, you very rarely heard Jahan Dotson's name. It was either Terry, or it was Dyami, or it was Zaccheaus, or it was Zach Ertz, right, in joint practices. So he could end up elevating all these guys, and they're just like, hey, we love Jayden so much, he can do it with these guys. It's possible. Now, if they can't create separation, I don't care who you are, you're not going to be able to complete passes. That's when you could potentially see a move. And that would also speak to what they think of the wide receiver room. I'm personally high on a Martavis Bryant or Brycen Tremayne, just given their size. When we talked about the other 5 wide receivers, they're not as big. I know Terry's good with contested catches and Luke as well. But when you already have the size, it just makes it that much easier and even larger catch radius. So I'd be curious as to those 2 names, if one of them becomes the 6th wide receiver that makes the team, K-Dot.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say absolutely, of course. Like here's my Booger McFarlane level of insight on this. The idea would be, very, very simply put, if they make a move, they're clearly not happy with where it is the wide receivers are. If they don't, then it's a lot more about the development of the guys that we already have in the room. I think that's all it is. I don't know exactly where it is they stand on it. I'm kind of glad I don't know exactly where they stand on it, because I've seen some hopeful things with some of the young guys here, which makes me feel good about certain aspects of them going forward. If they make a move right now, it would make me more concerned about maybe some of the guys that we have right there compared to what it is they
agree.
like. But then I'd also say, depending on who it is they went and got, be it a Brandon Ayuk, that problem goes away immediately because you have that talent just entered the building. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I don't know.
It is a pretty, can we just acknowledge, it is a pretty funny jump. We lost Jahan Dotson. You showed the stats and what they were, and we do like him. Let's go get Brandon Ayuk. Like that is not a comparable, it would be a game changer, just to be clear. That would, of course, be a game changer. But it's also, again, I talk about when. This is a very late move. This is a very, very late move for what the league will view as a talented wide receiver in Jahan Dotson.
They try to give him every opportunity. Like that's just what it came.
Yeah.
Down to. Like even when we're looking at last game and going, I mean, we had an entire segment on Jahan like 2 weeks in a row going into fucking preseason games, and while he had like he still hadn't had enough moments, right? Like he still didn't do anything to jump himself off the page. So it's like, but the one thing I'll push back as far as the Ayuk thing is that 5th-year option as far as Jahan. That was an important decision.
Massive part of this.
So, but my point being is that if that is now left the building, it's no longer a thing. The idea that you would then sign somebody for a longer term contract, knowing that you don't have to make that decision on the
makes it easier.
Makes it a lot easier to do. So it's not necessarily like a plug and play, like, oh, Jahan's gone, let's go get an Ayuk. It's not a 1-for-1, but the idea would be now that you do not have to worry about paying a guy top 15 money, you can then potentially afford a longer term thinking about it. Hey, we can go get this dude because we're not worried about.
I think my overall point is that for somebody that the Niners have pretty openly said they want to keep, and they're just sort of working out the number, with every passing day, it is less and less likely they trade that player.
I agree with that.
Right. So I would be shocked. Let me just be on the record there. I would be absolutely shocked if the Niners did trade Brandon Ayuk, first and foremost, and secondly to us this late in the game when we're just 2-3 weeks away from the NFL season. So I would be very surprised if we make a move in that regard. We may sign somebody else, but we've got our last preseason game coming up, and then it's Tuesday. And so all of a sudden, go ahead, K-Dot.
What about CD?
I mean, could you imagine? I mean, holy cow. Jerry might. Jerry wants a news headline. That's a news headline. But that won't happen. That'd be crazy.
I will just say that my one of the main reasons I had that I did not want Ayuk was because of the monetary thing when it came to Jahan and still trying to figure out what he was.
Right.
Now that we figured out it doesn't matter what he is because he's not with us anymore, I am now more open to getting a guy like that than I was. If we're looking at the tallies as far as just the pros and cons, right? It's one more in that direction. That does still not change the fact that I still think that San Francisco wants Ayuk and they're going to want to keep him. And I don't necessarily want to overpay for that guy. I get it. I'm just saying that there is an element to this that was absolutely hell, and we need to wait and see that is no longer applicable to this situation.
Yeah. So as we wrap this quick emergency pod up, K-Dot, question for you, and we'll do the comment mailbag in tomorrow's episode for those wondering. But question for you, which wide receivers would you have on the team as it stands today before a potential another emergency pod?
Fuck.
Sorry, I know I'm putting you on the spot. I can go with my 6 real quick.
Go with your 6, and I'm going to pull up the roster, and I'm gonna...
Right. Okay, so I would go Terry McLaurin. As of right now, as it stands for the audience, I would go Terry McLaurin, Dyami Brown, Olamide Zaccheaus, Luke McCaffrey, Jamison Crowder. I'm personally high on Martavis Bryant just because as a wide receiver 6, I think he provides a ton of upside because he's already played in the league. He's shown he's explosive. But I do not at all mind a Brycen Tremayne over there, who it's been documented. If you talk about playing like a commander, he's one of the first people in the building as well. And so I would like that kind of player on the roster. Those would be my 6. Slight lean towards Martavis because I probably have bias to when he was on my fantasy team years ago. But if Brycen Tremayne makes it, I'd be thrilled for him. And so I'd be totally fine with that. Those would be my 6.
Yeah, I don't think I'm any different than you.
Okay.
Yeah, Terry, of course. I love Luke, so Luke's going second to me.
Sure, why not?
Dyami Brown 3, Jamison Crowder 4, Zaccheaus 5, and then the 6th. I mean, I like the idea what you're saying as far as size from a Tremayne or Bryant. I would say it's more of a toss up than me leading any one particular way on those 2.
Sure.
But I'd also say that I think that this last preseason game, unless there's a move being made, becomes crucial.
We're going to talk about it in tomorrow's episode because we'll probably deeper dive into the remaining wide receivers and how important this game is.
I like Kaz Allen.
The coaching staff really likes Kaz Allen. So
if I'm going to put a gun in my head, I got Kaz Allen over Bryant or
Fair. And right now, between Bryant and Tremayne, for me, it's 55 Bryant, 45 Tremayne. So it's like close. I don't really mind it either way. Just I like the idea of having size as an option in case you need it. So anyway, that's gonna conclude the show. Any final thoughts, Kate, before we wrap up?
I don't know whether or not to say. I hope to see you guys soon for another maybe emergency pod.
Real quick. One other trade happened today. Let's talk about it because we have talked about the kicker. Cade York comes from Cleveland to us for a conditional 7th round pick. It is conditional on him being the kicker come week 1. So if we end up cutting him, it's actually just, hey, we got Cade York. It didn't work out. We actually don't give them a 7th round pick. That is my current understanding based on what I've read. But we'll get that confirmed for you guys. K-Dot, like the move? I like the move because we had to do something.
I don't think this will be the end.
I don't think so either. That's the thing. I just am like, okay, cool. At least we're trying.
Just have a motherfucker make all his kicks in a goddamn game 2 times in a row, and I'll be okay.
Cade York will be kicking on Saturday for this team. So that'll wrap up the show. This is District Divide, DC Sports Podcast, more specifically a Washington Commanders podcast. Thank you for listening to this quick emergency episode on the Jahan Dotson trade. Again, going to the Philadelphia Eagles along with a 5th round pick for a 3rd round pick and 2 7th round picks. I'm Amit. That is K-Dot. We will see you guys tomorrow. Like the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell, comment. We will read the comment mailbag, and K-Dot real quick.
Share this shit.
We appreciate you guys. See you tomorrow.
Bye, everybody.
In DC, we're just hoping that you listen.